Good afternoon, everybody. How are you all doing today? It's a bit rainy out there, isn't it? A bit rubbish. Or it is where I am anyway. I don't know where you're watching from, but yeah, here it's kind of we're in Kent, so I'm not sure if you're a local person or if you're watching from a little bit further away. But yeah, it's rainy and not nice here. Not so cold, which is, I guess, a bonus, but yeah, not really nice weather. I'm looking forward to spring, looking forward to getting some flowers coming up. So thank you for joining me again here for our next Paint Along Live. We're going to be doing a galaxy today. So if you joined me on, oh goodness, when was it? Was it Monday? We did our last live? I think it was Monday. We did an Arizona desert scene, which was really good. Everyone responded really well to it. The paints that people were doing were amazing, and not everyone were adults. There were lots of children doing it as well, and they just did it really, really well. So through the course of doing this painting, obviously I did some stars up in the sky because it was kind of beyond sunset. Sun was nearly gone, so we did some stars up here, and we mentioned that we would do a galaxy one for beginners, because galaxies are really, really easy to do, and they sound quite difficult because there's lots and lots of whirlpool galaxies like the Andromeda Galaxy or the Milky Way, and lots of, it's not just black. When we're sort of taught to draw the space when we're growing up, we're just taught to do white spots or white star shapes on a black background, and for anyone who kind of looks at the sky for any period of time, there's so many different colours up there. So I'm a little bit of a geek. I really love watching stars and doing stargazing and stuff like that. And recently, I know some people have kind of had a look because we could see Mars very clearly, and there were lots and lots of really fun space things going on in the sky just recently. And to see the different colours of all the different planets and stars is just, it's amazing up there. It really is. We like looking at Arcturus is a really good one to find because it's really easily visible. Mars obviously is a really good one because it has like this faint orange red hue to it, so that's really nice to spot as well. If it's really clear, if you have a really clear place, or you live up high or something like that, and no light pollution and no clouds and stuff like that, then you can see things like the Andromeda Galaxy from the naked eye, which is amazing, really. So I thought we would do a galaxy one because it's actually it's really fun and it's really easy for beginners. So I've done an example today so that people can see what we're heading for, just so that you can see how kind of cool it looks. So I've done the Milky Way. Don't panic, I know it looks kind of technical, but it's really not. It's really quite straightforward to do. It looks really cool though. The Milky Way is just incredible, really. And if you've never had a look at a time lapse of the Milky Way passing over our skies, then you really need to, because it's just incredible what is out in space. So this is what we're going to do today. I did put it on the products list because it didn't really occur to me how long it takes to paint, because when I paint I do it at my leisure, really. So, but obviously this one is quite a lot of water, and so it does take a little while to dry, so that it's probably a good idea to have, if you have a hairdryer or something like that, or if you sit near a radiator, so that you can put it on a radiator to dry or something for a few minutes. It will only take 5 or 10 minutes, but otherwise it's just a whole lot of me twiddling my thumbs and chatting to you and boring you while we're waiting for the first layer to dry, because this is literally all space. We can't sort of do the foreground or something while we're waiting for space to dry. It's just all space. so it's probably a good idea if you can go now before I start the actual class. And you can go and grab a hairdryer, or figure out if you're going to put it on a radiator or something like that. Don't put it in the microwave. I don't think cooked watercolours is a very good idea. So anywhere just kind of warm and dry, even like the airing cupboard maybe. You know, if you just stick it on the outside of the hot water tank or something like that, it'd probably dry really quickly. So So have a plan in mind for where you want to dry it, and it needs to be somewhere where it's not going to, like if you dry it with a hairdryer from a distance, don't go too close because you don't want it to blow all your paint everywhere, and don't put it on a slope because you don't want it all to run down either. So hopefully there won't be so much water that it's all kind of falling off your paintings. Or if you're watching it on replay, just go and make yourself a cup of tea and then come back to it. Put me on pause, and then it'll be lovely and dry by the time you come back to it. Obviously, it would be a real shame to try and hurry the process along, because we're looking at getting this lovely kind of mottled Milky Way look, and that it really needs time to dry into that. So I'll show you a little bit closer what it looks like, just so you can have a nice close-up. So when you look up into the sky, it's very difficult to see this with the naked eye, but you can see it with different exposures on your camera phone or on a really good camera, or if you do a time lapse, you'll be able to see it and notice it a little bit more. But the Milky Way has actually got loads and loads of different colours in it. It's got turquoises, pinks, lilacs, kind of milky whites, hence why it's called the Milky Way, some really dark indigos. So it's got loads and loads of colours in it, really. So we want to try and use some of that. So you'll notice that some of those colours there, you'll be able to see a real big spot of alizarin crimson there. I've got some phthalo green in there. That's that turquoisey colour you can see. Up here we've got a violet blue. I've done a couple of little shooting stars as well, just because I'm a little bit of a Steven Spielberg fan. So anyone who watches his films will always look out for the shooting star, I think. And then down here on the horizon, you will often get a little bit of light pollution from the Earth. If you're really lucky and you're far north, then you might get a little bit of northern lights. So I've done a bit of a phthalo green down at the bottom here, just to kind of show that glow from the atmosphere, really. So you'll notice that the way I've done the trees, they're kind of all in a pattern like this. So I've done it as though you're laying in the back of a truck or out on a sun lounger, stargazing, and this is your perspective. So you'll see the trees kind of crouching in around you when you're looking up, directly up at the stars from your perspective. So that's why I've done it that way, just because it makes it a bit interesting. And you may well have seen a few paintings done this way. It just gives it a real sense of being there. So that's why I've done it, and it's also quite an easy way to finish your painting and make it feel really atmospheric. Okay, so we'll make a start now. So I've got an A4 piece of paper. I'm going to tape it onto my board just because I don't want it to move anywhere. Obviously we're going to be using quite a lot of water on our paint, so that would tend to make, if you haven't got a very, very good quality of paper or you're not using a watercolour block, that would make the paper buckle sometimes. So if you can just tape it down, that would be great. If you don't want to, you don't have to. It just may be that on lesser quality paper, when it buckles, the water might collect in a certain area, so you might get a little bit of that when it dries, and it might take a little while longer to dry. So if you want it to dry fairly quickly and fairly evenly, then taping it down is probably a good idea. Also, a little trick that I showed on Monday is some people have the paper tear when they tape it down. So a good little tip that you can do with your masking tape is you just take off the length that you need for an A4 piece of paper and then just put it against your clothes like this. So what it does, it picks up very fine fibres off your clothes, the kind of fibres that you'll probably see when you're using the tumble dryer. And those tiny thin fibres just take some of the sticky away, so that when you pull up your design, it's not, it doesn't rip the paper, because those little fibres just give it enough of a barrier that one of mine hair's caught in that now. That's really nice, isn't it? Sorry about that. So it just gives it enough of a barrier that the tape doesn't rip the paper. So again, that really depends on the quality of paper you use. If you use a very high quality hot pressed or cold pressed paper, it's going to be very unlikely to tear. unless you try and take it off while your painting's still wet, in which case the paper is much more fragile then. So if you're using a better quality paper, it's a little bit better and less prone to ripping. But if you use a cheaper cellulose, I'm just using a cellulose paper today. I do really like the nice papers, they're really lovely, but when I'm just having a bit of a play, I only really use my super special papers when I'm doing commissions for you guys. So I don't really use it all the time. When I'm just having a bit of a play and enjoying the colours and stuff like that, then I just use a cellulose. There's a few nice ones, okayish ones on the market. Daler-Rowney do a really good cellulose. It's 100% cellulose. It's got a reasonable price tag on it, but it goes nice and flat again after you've painted on it, and it's just a nice quality paper. It's really nice and consistent. You don't get any bits that repel the water, so they're really good. So I'm just masking this out now. Hopefully you're masking along with me. Okay, I'm just going to put a couple more bits of tape on here just to hold it steady, because I'm going to be using quite a bit of water. Was anybody here for my Monday class? Did anybody do the Arizona desert with me? Hopefully I've got some that have returned. I know it's a difficult time because it's starting to get ready for tea time, isn't it? But hopefully this is also a good time that you've done everything that you need to do for the day school-wise, if you're a homeschooling parent at the moment. And then you can sit down and have a cup of tea and either watch this and relax for a little while, or you can paint along if you're painting, or you can just set the kids up and let them do it and you can go and have a chill out. Okay, right, so that's all taped onto my board now. So again, I use a lot of these, like the cutting mats that have got the grid reference on it, because it helps me to get them really square if I want to. I do try and do a lot of things by eye, but if you're doing something that you're intending to frame, it's a really good idea to try and get it square. So if you use a cutting mat, then it's got a ruler already existing on it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tilt my phone down so that you can have a bit of a look at what I'm doing in real time and then paint along with me. So the colours that we're going to be using, a turquoise colour. So if you don't have a turquoisey colour, you can use a really nice forest green with a nice blue, make a really nice turquoise. You can add a bit of white to it if you want to. This is the Milky Way, so we can add a bit of white and it doesn't damage the work at all. We're going to be using an alizarin crimson for our flecks of pink throughout our Milky Way. We're going to be using a real deep indigo blue. So if you haven't got an indigo blue, then just get the darkest blue that you can get from your palette. If you do have a blue violet, then that would be really good. Otherwise, you can just mix your darkest blue with your alizarin crimson and a little bit of white, and you can make a lilac yourself. So that will be quite easy. And if you're struggling with the light reflection down towards the horizon line, you can also add a bit of lemon yellow or something like that in there. It will give you that really nice Northern Lights colour when it hits the blue. So I'll show you the picture to show you what I mean. So this kind of colour down here. So I used the phthalo green, but I did put a little bit of lemon yellow into it. And you can see the kind of the stripes in there because I really like that kind of Northern Lights kind of colour. And also you'll need ideally a white gouache, but if you don't have that, then you can use white watercolour, you can use a gel pen, you can use white acrylic. There's lots and lots of things that you can use to do your stars, but if you have a gouache, then that's really helpful. It spatters really well and we can do some shooting stars on the next one. Okay, also I said on Monday I don't often use black. Well, tonight I'm going to be using black because I need to do the silhouette of the trees. You can do them with some slight colour on it if you prefer, so you can do like a really dark mix of forest green or something, but I'm going to do it black because otherwise I think it distracts from the space. But that's my personal preference, so if you want to go down that route you can do that. Okay, so I'm going to just tip my phone forward now so that you can see. So it's going to have to come close to me for a moment before I tilt. Okay. Hopefully you can see that all right. Can we get a thumbs up if someone's on? I'm going to try and set it up so you can see the whole paper at one time. And try not to bash it with my face as I'm painting. Okay, so I'm going to be using a really large wash brush. So this one is actually, it's a 1.5 inch wash brush, but you don't have to use one as big as this if you don't want to. Whatever wash brush you've got is absolutely fine. It's really easy to get 1 inch or 3/4 inch wash brushes. So you can do that, or if you have one of the bamboo brushes, then that's fine, you can do that. So what we're going to be doing, I've got 2 pots of really, really clean water. One of them is going to be my rinse pot, one of them is going to be my water pot. So we're going to be using a lot of water in this one, so I want to try and keep one of those pots clean if I can, and the other one's going to be for rinsing my brushes. I've got some paper towels over here as well, so in case I need to use it to mop up any spills, or if there's too much water on my paper, just have them handy there. Sometimes they're quite nice for making some of the patterns in the Milky Way as well. So I'm going to start by wetting the whole of the paper down. So it's all taped down nicely. So I'm just going to use my wash brush to wet down the whole paper. So if you've got a light source somewhere that you can hold the paper up and then you can see, don't know if I can do it here. So you can see then the sheen on the paper. So it helps if you've got a bit of a light source like that, and then you can make sure that you've covered all of the paper fully, because we don't want to have to keep re-wetting this ideally, we want to do it once. So this isn't swimming in water, but it is very wet. And I'm doing that deliberately because I don't want this to dry out while we're doing our effect. So I'm going to move quite quickly. I'm going to get the turquoise that I mentioned for my horizon line. So I'm going to do this about 10 centimetres up the paper. I'm going to do this turquoise colour. So you're not going to see the bottom of the paper, so it doesn't matter how neat it is there. So I'm just going to do this kind of haphazardly, because I don't need it to be perfect. That's the nice thing about doing a spacey sky, is you don't need it to be perfect. And I've got a little bit of phthalo green here, so I'm just going to do some phthalo green in the mix there. So this is kind of like a blue, forest green and blue combo. So I'm just going to do that. We can take this up a little bit further because all this is going to be covered in indigo in a minute anyway. Okay. So the next colour we're going to go into, I'm using a Sennelier blue, but you can use a Prussian blue or a ultramarine, anything that you've got like that that's a really vivid blue will be really good. I'm just going to start putting in the edges here. Oh, mine's already starting to dry a little bit. So let's try and work quickly. So I've got this nice deep blue now that I'm just putting everywhere. I'm not being careful at all. I don't want it to be too routine and too patterny. Okay, so that's good. I'm going to add a tiniest bit of alizarin crimson in it, just because I want a few little specks of that. So I'm really not being careful with this at all. Okay, so there's my alizarin crimson. So you'll notice that I'm concentrating on this kind of diagonal pattern here. There's a reason for that. Obviously I wanted to make sure that the Milky Way is the right shape. So the Milky Way that I've done on this one, you'll see, is that kind of diagonal shape. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. So I'm gonna get some deep indigo now, because I want to start darkening off those corners. It's really important that you get those corners dark while the canvas is wet. So let's start getting some indigo on there. So if you've got your indigo or your darkest, most dark blue, then that's what we need now. So the good thing about this one is you don't have to be too careful and too perfect how you do it. So I'm just going to darken off these corners even further now. So I'm not mixing my indigo with an awful lot of water now, because I want it to be at its most intense concentration on this. Okay, this is drying out a little bit at the bottom here, so I'm just going to use my wash brush and just re-moisten that, because I don't want that to go too... I want to try and keep it as random as possible. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to try and add in some white to our mix. So I'm just putting a tiny little bit of white on my brush, and I'm just going to sort of dab it on here and try and get some white blooms going. So you'll notice when I touch, can you see it blooms when I touch on that water? That's because my paper's still wet and I'm putting a white wet brush onto this. So I'm going to do it a little bit more haphazardly now you've seen the effect it's making. So if I show you a little bit closer, can you see these lovely blooms that it's causing on the paper? So we want to encourage that for this one. So we want to have as many of these as possible. So I want to try and keep this paper wet. I'm going to put some more of that on. Going to make some a little bit more lilac-y now. So this is just going to be you repeatedly adding stuff to this until it looks really mottled. You can just add water if you want to some bits of it. This is why I said you might need a hairdryer, because the amount of water that you have into these. I'm going to put a little bit of blue in there. And don't worry if it starts to look kind of a bit of a mess. Just be careful that you're placing things in such a way that you're not covering up some of the really good stuff that's happening. So these blooms here, I don't want to cover those up. I want to allow them to carry on doing what they're doing. So I'm only going to try and place things where it's quite boring and I want to add a little bit of interest. Okay, let's add a tiny little bit of yellow to it, see what happens. So you can see like all the colours are kind of swirling into each other now, making like a really pretty sort of marbled effect, if you like. I think the first time I did a Milky Way Galaxy, I was really worried and thought, oh no, I've just completely messed it up. It doesn't look very good at all. But it does dry a lot better than you think it's going to. Okay, right, I'm just going to put some more dark indigo on there now, just because I've got lots and lots of effects going on, so I want to try and get the indigo back up. So I'm just going to lift it up so that you can see, because I've got this big bloom of water going on here now, so I want to try and darken that off a tiny bit. So when you get those big water blooms, you kind of need to be a bit careful, because if you add more water to it, it just enhances the bloom. And if that's what you're trying to help, then you're just going to find yourself in a whole world of trouble. So I'm just trying to add a little bit here and there to try and make it look a bit spacey. This is a really great paint for kids because you get to be kind of quite messy. I think you get told a lot when you're a child to colour inside the lines and all these different rules of painting. And I had a real job when I started painting again as an adult. I had a real job doing things in a less intentional way. And you kind of lose a little bit of your creativity when you throw that out, which is a real shame. God, there's loads of colours going on in this now. How are you all doing? Are you doing okay? So I'm just adding a few sort of darker areas in this now. I was mentioning on Monday, it's really good when you do this as a time lapse, because when you're doing a lot of work that involves blooms in watercolour, it can be really fun to do, because on a time lapse you see them kind of expand out, which is, it's just the most calming, meditative thing to watch. Okay, right, so I've got quite a lot of indigo going on there now. So it looks like a hot mess at the moment, but trust me, as it dries, it really starts to take on a really pretty, spacey look. So I'm just going to put a few more little splodges of things in here that will bloom out. I'm trying not to obscure any of the good stuff. I really love all these colours that are going on here, so I don't want to obscure them, but I also want to kind of have some really interesting patterns going on. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that at the moment, so I'm going to leave all my blotchiness going on there for a little while, and I'm just going to increase this turquoise down here on my horizon. So I'm using a medium wet brush. I'm just going to re-wet this bit down here because this bit's gone dry while I was focusing on the Milky Way. So I'm just going to add a little bit of turquoise in here. And just try and get a nice gradual blend from the indigo down into the kind of atmosphere of the earth, as it were. So if you want to go a bit more Northern Lights, like I did on mine, then if you have this blue turquoise down here, you can just add a little bit of lemon yellow into it. You end up with this kind of interesting kind of Northern Lights issue going on. I might do a Northern Lights painting on one of these lives at some point, so let me know if you want to see that. Okay, right, so now we've probably got to the fairly boring part where we've got to let it dry, because obviously with all this water on it we can't put stars on there now, because if we put stars it's just going to go the same way that these blotches have all gone. So we don't necessarily want to do that now. We want to leave it until it's really dry. So I'll show you again kind of where we were heading. So here's our mottled effect that we did earlier. I'll try and give you a bit of a close-up so that you can spot some of the blooms. So you can see a really obvious bloom here where the white has just kind of bloomed out into the indigo and caused this kind of, it looks like a bit like a crater on the moon. So that is really nice. The little bits of alizarin crimson that come through as a bit of a lilac, and the turquoise and phthalo green down here. So you can kind of see now that how that really makes this really nice Milky Way look. So if it's not dark enough in the corners, you can go a little bit darker with some black if you want, if you need. Not sure if you need to do that. Just notice that that isn't doing what I want it to do, so I'm just going to have a fiddle with that. I'm not very good at leaving things alone at all, so hopefully you're better than me, because I end up having a bit of a play and then getting annoyed with myself. But I'm trying to it's a real balancing act trying to get all these effects kind of how you want them. But this blue is not doing what I want it to do, so I'm just going to have a bit of a fiddle with that for a moment. That's a little bit better. Yeah, I'm a bit happy with that. Okay, right, I am going to leave it alone now. I might do the black in the corners just to make it really dark, because I want to have it as real kind of deep space up here. So I'm just going to add a tiny little bit of black over my indigo just to make these corners really dark. So you don't need to do this if you don't want to. If you end up with a stark line like I just have and you want to kind of fix it, all you need to do is just dampen your brush and then run it along, and it helps to pick up some of the paint. Buys you a little time to fix it. Okay, I'm just going to do a little bit more of that indigo down here because it's gone really light and I want it to be a bit darker. How are you doing with yours? Is it going good? Oh, Katie, hi. How's it going where you are? I don't know if the Channel Islands have been as badly affected as here. Hopefully you're okay there. Okay, there you go. So I've darkened that off as much as I want to. That's it. Okay, right, I'm leaving it to dry now. Okay, so while that's drying, do you not? I suppose it's a fraction warmer, isn't it there? I'm just going to turn this camera back round so that I can chat to you guys for a minute while my painting's drying a little bit. So my friend Katie's in the Channel Islands. I can never remember which one you're on. Are you Jersey or Guernsey? I can't remember. Oh, good, Laura. I'm glad you're painting along. Yeah, it's really fun to do it. Like, you can get some really nice mottled colours. This one looked really tragic as I was doing it. So just believe in yourself, because when it dries, it really changes and it looks really nice. So I really like this now, but when it was wet, I was like, oh man, how am I going to be able to show this to people? It's a hot mess. But as it dries, it really does work. So it's a really fun way of painting as well, because you can be a bit more free. With everything else, you're having to follow lines and stuff like that. Which is a real pain, and I don't really like following the rules. I don't know how many of you are rule followers or rule breakers, but I'm kind of a rule breaker. Yeah, I'm not very well behaved when I go and do an art class and someone says, oh, but it has to be here and it has to be red. Then I'll say, why does it have to be there? Why can't it be down here and why can't it be blue? Blue's my favourite colour. So I'm that student in an art class. Hence why I really like doing things like this, because it's very freeing to be able to do something that you don't have to play by the rules. And nature doesn't play by the rules. You know, if you're painting something from nature, something that you see in nature, it's very rare that you see a perfect flower. Brush recommendations. Yeah, sure. So for brush recommendations, probably a really good starter pack of brushes are Graduate do some really nice ones. I remember seeing some, I think they were on, might have been on eBay or something like that. But I'm sure if you search on any kind of place that sells things like that, even probably Amazon, dare I say it. I don't like recommending Amazon, but if you search watercolour brushes, Graduate watercolour brushes, they're not fantastic brushes, but they're fine. They work really well. They hold the water really well. They wash really well. They don't fall apart. They've got acrylic handles, which is really good. I really like brushes with acrylic handles. So yeah, I think they're really good, and I think they're a good bet for brushes for kids. I don't think with watercolour you really don't have to play by the rules. You can use, I know some of the best artists I know use absolutely terrible brushes, you know, ones that they got free with a pack of something in a cereal box or something, and it's become their go-to brush. And so as long as it works for you, it really doesn't matter. So really the only rules with brushes, if you're able to go into a shop and pick them, is they should be really soft, they should look like they hold quite a good amount of water, and then just get a couple of detailer brushes. So I've got ones like this, which is a really fine detailing brush, and then I've got ones like this is a Silver Black Velvet, which is a really nice brand, but you know, it's kind of one of the ones that you want to do if you want to take it a bit more seriously. So this one is a liner brush. So when I'll show you, when it's wet, it's like a really, really thin brush. And if I can just grab a bit of paper from somewhere, I have to do it on a bit of kitchen roll. Where's all my paper gone? I'll just do it on the back of this one. So with a script liner brush, you can get like really, really fine lines, really, really detailed. So they're really, really nice to use. They're really satisfying to use. So if you're doing something that like branches on a tree, it can be really good because there's a really long tapered bristle on it. So you can, when you kind of wiggle it from side to side, it makes like really pleasing branches and stuff when you do it. So you can get really fine detail. So if you're doing like trees and florals and things like that, you can get some really nice effects with it. So at least one script liner. So you need to be looking for a wash brush, which is a really thick, wide brush that holds a lot of water. A mop brush, which is slightly smaller than the wash brush, but again holds lots and lots of water. Here's one of my mop brushes. So that's, you can see kind of where it meets the ferrule, it's quite big. Here's another really good mop brush. So this is a really nice one. Calligraphy ones, the Japanese calligraphy ones that have these kind of ferrules, they're really, really good because they hold so much ink. They're designed for writing for long periods of time. So all these calligraphy brushes are really, really good because they hold loads of ink inside them. They also come to a really nice fine point, so you can do real detailed work with a really big brush. So I really like those, so I think those are always really good to have. So where were we? A wash brush, a mop brush, a script liner brush, a detail brush, and that's probably it. You could probably do everything with those. Some people really like angular brushes, so you can do some quite nice effects with leaves and stuff like that with a chisel brush, an angular brush, but I hardly ever use mine. So, but if you search up the graduate brushes, they do like, I think there's 5 in there, and I think you get a dagger brush, you get a wash brush, you get a detail brush, a liner brush. I think that's probably what you get in there. But that will be fine for what you need, and they will last forever. It's a synthetic Taklon brush, so it just lasts forever, and it doesn't matter how much you scrub at it and stuff. They're really hardy. Let's have a... Oh, good. Oh, you're... Good. I'm really glad that Bella's enjoying it. I hope you're doing it as well. I'm sure you're very creative as well, so I'm sure you should do it as well, Laura. Procreate. Yeah, a little. Both my girls have been using it. but I'm really not tech savvy. I really need to sort myself out. I really love drawing programs and things like that, but I'm not good at them. I'm a bit old school, so I prefer kind of getting my hands dirty and doing stuff. But yeah, I really wish I could be technically minded. How are you doing? Right, how's everybody's painting looking? Is it kind of dry? Mine's getting there. Mine's doing all right. So you can see mine's it's kind of coming along now. You can see kind of all the mottled stuff is starting to happen. You can see when I tip it, you can see that there's still a slight sheen. So it's still slightly wet. So I'm going to leave it a little bit longer, otherwise those stars are going to bloom on mine. I don't know if any of you are using a hairdryer or if you've got your work on a radiator or anything like that. If I start again and you're not ready, that's fine. This will be on our page, it will be on replay, so you can just watch it later after yours has dried if you want to. Oh, good. How are you enjoying it, Bella? Is it all right? Is it all going okay? Oh, yum. Just having a quick swig of tea. How are we doing for time? Oh, we're doing good. Okay. So hopefully you're all getting to the point where it's started to dry off nicely and you're going to be ready to do the stars in a minute with me. So I'll talk you through the star technique now. Oh, good. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Really pleased. So the brush that I like to use for stars is an acrylic brush. It's actually a low Cornell brush. It's one of my favourite brushes. I've had this for donkeys of years and it's a lovely brush. A lot of my painter friends will know why I've got this, because it's just an absolutely gorgeous brush. It's got a really nice chiselled end on it, so it's really good for scratching away artwork. It's really good for when I've got gouache, if I want to take gouache out of the tube and smear it into something, it's really good for that. But it's got a really nice flexibility to it, a really nice spring. I don't know if you can see that, but it's got a really good spring to it. And when I do stars, what I do is I make a little pool, put some gouache into my ceramic palette and then mix it with water until I get an inky consistency, and then I do this motion on my brush and you'll see the brush move in there and it just flicks just enough that you get some really good stars. So you don't end up with stars that are all the same size or placed really evenly. That's the worst thing when you do stars, is that they can, when you sort of purposefully place them, you end up with them so evenly spaced that they don't look real. So at least if you do this spatter technique, you get lots of different sizes and lots of different placement of them, and it looks just a little bit more real. And that's how the sky looks. All the stars are different shapes and sizes. Some of them are really close together, particularly around the Milky Way. So it would be really good to use this spatter technique on this. So when you're doing it, you literally just hold the brush about that far away from the paper and just flick, 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 flick wherever you want it. Reload, flick, flick, flick. And you do that, you keep doing that until you've got the stars, as many as you want. I really like sort of doing lots and lots of stars because I just think it looks so much more magical when it's like that. And I really like the long exposure pictures. So that shows all of the stars then, and it's just overwhelming how many that there are up there. So I will probably be doing lots of stars on mine. You don't have to do that on yours. If you're not going to use the gouache and brush technique to spatter them, then you can also use a white gel pen. There's loads of different types available. So this is just an acrylic white marker. So you just kind of pump to prime the nib on it, and then you can place your stars by hand. You just have to be mindful that you do it in a haphazard way, otherwise they don't look believable. So hopefully in a minute you'll get the spatter technique okay. If you're worried about doing it on your artwork, if you've never done it before, then just get a piece of kitchen roll or a spare bit of paper and have a practice on that until you do it. It's after you've done it once or twice, I guarantee you'll be able to do it really well. It's not a difficult technique to do, but it's really fun. It's quite fun to do. So you end up with some really good designs. You can also, if you want to go the extra mile like I did and had a few shooting stars, you can do. So you can see that I've done, on this one here, I did some additional star bursts. So I literally just put the brush onto the star and flicked it up, flicked it down, and did kind of 4 flicks on there. You can see them. Did the same on this one. I did another one somewhere, can't see it now. Oh, it's up here. Okay, because you get those kind of ones that look like they're twinkling, just the odd one here or there. So I did that, and then I did a couple of shooting stars because I really love shooting stars, but you don't have to do that. If you're a little bit worried about doing it, then practice on a bit of paper first, and if you don't like how it turns out, then don't do it on your work. If you do like how it turns out, then have a go of it. What have you got to lose? It might be amazing. You might love it. Okay, so I think I'm not very, very dry on here yet, but I'm dry enough to do stars. So I'll do that. So here's where we've got to now. So I've got all this lovely sort of mottled look. Still doesn't look that believable, but you'll be amazed once the stars go on how different it looks. So I'm just going to turn my camera back round again so that you can see. Okay. You see that all right? Hopefully that's okay. Okay, so I've got some gouache in my ceramic palette. I'm just going to mix it with a bit of water to make an inky consistency. I want the brush to be really wet, so let me try and show you if I can. There we go. So the brush is really wet with paint and water. I want it to be like that deliberately. So now I'll do some spattering. I'll try and go a bit closer so that you can see. So what I'm doing is I'm just tapping the brush with my finger. And you get this really pleasing haphazard. You don't get it as haphazard as this if you do it with a toothbrush. A lot of people say, oh, if you just load up a toothbrush with it, yeah, that's fine, but sometimes you get a really deliberate streak of splash across it, and then it just looks like they've been splashed. So this is a kind of a better way of getting some more believable stars. So I'm going to concentrate in some areas more than others because, especially around the Milky Way, you get to see lots and lots of clusters of stars and little galaxies and things like that. So I want that. I want to deliberately do that because I think that looks really pretty. So we're not going to splash too much down by the horizon because you don't really see stars very much at the horizon because you just get this light pollution. So we're going to do the majority of them on the top 2/3 of our bit of paper. So you can do this. Oh, good. Well done, Bella. I tell you what, everything's going to be covered in stars from now on. Now you're doing it. I do quite like to do lots of stars because I love the stars. I love stargazing. I love clear nights. I love going to France where the air is much clearer and you can see loads and loads and loads of stars. And unfortunately, I bore my children with them because I'm always saying, oh, go and spot Arcturus, go and spot Sirius. I think they find me incredibly boring, but I think that's what grown-ups are supposed to do. They're supposed to bore their children to tears, aren't they? Bore them and embarrass them. Okay, I think I'm probably getting to the point where I've had enough now. Okay. I'm quite happy with that, so I'm going to leave that there for stars. Now these dry quite quickly, despite the fact that they've got quite a lot of water in them where you've mixed them with the gouache, if that's the technique that you've used. They actually dry fairly quickly, so we can move on to the next part of our painting now without leaving them too long. Also quite conscious of time because you're probably all getting starving and wanting your dinner by now. So I'm just going to move this down here a little bit so that you can have a bit of a look. So I'm going to go back to my this brush. This is actually a size 8 in the silver black velvet, but it's more like a size 6. So if you're using one of the other round brushes, you probably need like a size 6 for this. You need one that's got a fairly good point on it. So I don't know if you can see the point on my brush. It's got a really sharp point, which is exactly what I want because I'm going to do these trees now. So I'm going to do these trees around here. So I'll show you on the back of this little card, I'll show you how I do trees. So I just wet my brush. I don't want it sopping wet. I just want it damp. And then I'm going to load it up with some Mars Black. So if you've decided that you want to use a really, really dark green, then you can load up with that too. But I've loaded it up with Mars Black. So what I'll do, when I do a tree, I want to do a line. This is my guideline, so you're not going to be able to see it after you start painting, but I just want a guideline. And then you just push the brush down and move it to and fro like this. I'll do it from a side so that you can see what the brush looks like. So when the brush meets the paper, it's just pushing down very gently on the paper. And that gives the effect of a conifer tree with the hanging branches down. So you just move from side to side with your brush always pointing towards the top. And then when you get to the bottom, we're going to go right up to the tape down here. So you won't see the bottom. So hopefully that should be a fairly believable conifer tree. So I'll just do it again, just so that you can see again. So you do a guideline for yourself, and then you start leaving a point at the top, and you go to and fro, making kind of a zigzag pattern of branches. You can leave little gaps and things because they do have little gaps where you can see the sky through the other side, so that's fine. So that's what we want. We want these kind of like fluffy hanging conifer trees. So what we're going to do now, in order to get the perspective, we're going to put something at the top of our paper that's going to remind us where we're pointing towards. So I'm going to use my rubber at the top here. So I'm going to put that right in the middle of my paper there. So when I draw my guideline for my conifer trees, I'm going to do it pointing away from that. So I'll show you what I mean. So I'll put my brush there. So if I put my brush to that rubber, then my conifer tree is going to come here where my brush handle is. And then the ones that are down here at the bottom, I'm going to put my brush there and they're going to be here. And then when I do these ones over here, the line is going to be here where my brush handle is. Okay, does that make sense? So then they're all going to be pointing, the point of the tree is all going to be pointing to my rubber, and that will give us that perspective as though we're laying at the foot of the trees and gazing up into space. So I'm going to do my first one over here. I'm going to do a small one to begin with till I get my confidence. You can see my line there. Don't worry about painting over the stars. So there's my first conifer. It goes over the edge here, you can see where my tape is. So it's going over the top of my tape. So I'm going to do my next one here. So I'm going to try and plan where that's going to go because I want it pointing towards my rubber. So I need to remember to look at my rubber. So I'm going to do this one, is going to be quite a tall one. There you go. So there's my guideline. And then I'm just going to go to and fro with my brush. Okay, so that's gone right off the corner of my paper there. My tripod's making funny noises now. I hope it doesn't ping off and shoot across the room somewhere. That'd be really helpful, wouldn't it? I'm just going to reload my brush because I used quite a lot of my paint to do that last big tree. So now I need to make sure that this tree is going to be pointing towards my rubber. So I'm going to do another, maybe quite a small one here. So this isn't quite at the same sharp angle that this one was because it's pointing towards my rubber. This one's a little bit smaller than the ones next to it. So you don't have to have them meeting at the bottom here, but you should have them different heights. Because they very seldom are perfect and symmetrical. So we're going to have them some different heights. I'm going to have this one, it's going to be a tiny one. It's going to be really close to the one next to it because it will be further away. And then this one here will be a different size again. So the more random you do them, the more believable they look. So I'm going to remember, I'm pointing towards my rubber. I'm going to do this one a bit bigger. How are you getting on with your conifers? You doing okay? Now I really like this bit of my Milky Way here, so I don't want to cover it up. So I'm going to keep these trees over this side quite small. Just going to remember to point them towards my rubber. Going to have one tall one pointing towards my rubber again. And then I don't want to cover this bit up, so I'm going to bring my next tree is going to come up this side. So we started this one quite high up on this side, so I'm going to do another one high up on this side. So point it to my rubber so I can see where my tree's going to go. There you go. Okay. And that is a finished painting. So you can do other things if you want to make it more special. You can go back over these trees once they're dry with some white gouache if you want to put some snow on them. I might do that on mine once they're dry, but I quite like it how it is, so I may leave it how it is. But I am going to sign my artwork because I think you always should, because then when you look back in years to come, you can see what age you were when you did the painting. You can see how much you've progressed. You can see the changes in materials, because if you would have painted something 50 years ago, the materials we had available then were nothing like the materials available now. So it's always interesting to see how things change over time. So I'm just going to sign my painting here. I try and do it on a dark but still visible area of my painting so that the signature doesn't overtake it. So I'm just going to do that now. So you probably won't be able to see that on camera, but I can see that myself. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that. So I might brave taking the paper off while you're watching, because I find that really satisfying when you're kind of watching. I love watching people remove the tape. So I'll start taking the tape off now while you're finishing up the last of your trees. I hope that you really like some of the techniques that you've learned today. I hope it's given you some interesting things that you'd like to try next time as well. So, go undo this bit under here now. So when I take off tape, I take it off at right angles like that. It also makes it less inclined to tear. Sometimes it still does a little bit, but if you do it at right angles like this, it gives you the best chance in getting the tape off nice and clean. God, it's so satisfying taking off the tape. I think that's the main reason why I tape my work, is because it's so satisfying to take it off afterwards. How are you guys that are painting along doing? Have your trees been okay? I'm just going to take off this at right angles nice and slowly again, because I don't want it to tear. Of course, it's really difficult with my camera in the way. Oh, good. Well done, Bella. You have to get your mum to share it on the kids group for us, because I'd love to see what you've done. Right, so I'm just going to take off this one now. This is a bit scary because that tree's still a tiny bit wet. Oh, it's a bit scary when you see the paint spilled underneath the tape onto your next tape level. Oh, hopefully it's not gone on my work. Get rid of that one, and then we can take the final bit of tape off. think taking tape from work has got to be up there with the most satisfying things to do of all time. Right, so hopefully this has worked well. Yay! Oh, it's so satisfying when you get the tape off cleanly. So there we have our finished painting. You can see that mine's still a tiny bit wet, so you might want to wait for yours to fully dry until you're fully finished before you take off the tape from yours. I'd hate you to get this far in your work and then you feel a little bit sad because it's ripped or something like that. So, let's put this back. Oh no, I'm showing you all the mess. All my messy... I'm not a tidy painter at all. I'm really messy. Don't tell your parents if you're a child and you're watching. Okay, right, so hold this up so that you can see it this way around. And there we've got our nice Milky Way Galaxy with our space. We've got our nice glowing horizon here. And all our stars look really good. Our trees look really good. I'm quite pleased with that. I'd really, really love to see your paintings. Everyone was so kind on Monday and shared their paintings with me, and it's just amazing for me to be able to see that, especially people that were complete beginners. So this was, I'll show you again in case you weren't on here earlier. This was the painting that we did on Monday. It's not that technically difficult, but it is kind of a really nice achievement when you get it, because it's got this lovely shadow casting, it's got the mirage of the desert, it's got the blooming cumulonimbus clouds, it's got the stars. So there's a lot of really fun techniques in it, and everybody that had a go did amazing. And it was so nice for me to see everybody's work. So I really hope that all of you that have had a go, if you will share your work with me, that would be really lovely, because lots of people are considering classes and stuff here, and I want people to see that they are capable of so much more. And the amount of people that I've taught in my life, and they've always said, oh, I can't draw a stick man, I'm terrible at art. Everybody has the capacity to be an artist. Sometimes it's techniques that you just need to learn, sometimes it's muscle memory, sometimes it's just knowledge of the product. So there's loads and loads of things that you can do, so please don't ever feel that you can't do it. It's a lot, once you know how to do it, once you know the process, once you know the order in which you do things and the placement, it's really satisfying to do. And then when you get to the end of a piece of artwork and you have something pretty that you can hang on your wall, something that you can put in a frame or something, then it is really satisfying. So I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope that you're really happy with yours. I'm sure they look amazing and I'd really love to see them. But I'm going to head off now. I need to go home to see my family, and I need to close up the shop because I'm still in the shop at the moment. So I'm going to be putting up some more Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 classes on Zoom up this week. There's going to be one tomorrow, so if you're have a child that likes doing the Zoom classes, there's going to be one tomorrow. There's going to be another one on Friday. I might try and fit in another one on Friday, but I've got a couple of private lessons on Friday as well, so we'll have to see how that goes, but I'll share them to the groups anyway so that you can see them. And if anyone does want any one-to-one artwork with me, then I do have a few spaces left. I think I've got 3 spaces left for private one-to-one classes, so if that's something that you were hoping to do for yourself or for your child, or you can even do it together, then that would be really nice, and then you get a bit more one-to-one interaction with me, and we're on a camera so that so that I can see how you're working, and I can give you some tips on how to hold brushes and how to get the effects that are just the real wow factor effects, because it is really fun to paint and everyone can do it. Okay, I'm going to head off. So I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for joining me. I've had a really nice time painting with you. I've loved looking up into the stars, my favourite thing to do. And I really hope that you can join us either at one of our Zoom classes or at our next live. Okay, see you later everybody. Bye bye.